Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Shiny Boots. Today we'll be taking a look at the dark history of lunatic asylums, mental hospitals and madhouses. The building you see on screen is of High Royds Hospital, formerly known as West Riding Pauper Lunatic Asylum. We're in the area of Leeds today, looking at a rather tiny village named Menston, where the asylum was situated. It has been converted into luxury apartments in Shevin Park. So let's go look at it. Welcome. High Royds Hospital is a former psychiatric hospital south of the village of Menston in West Yorkshire. The 300-acre estate on which the asylum was built was purchased by the West Riding Justices for £18,000 in 1885. It's a large Gothic complex of stone buildings and was formally opened as the West Riding Pauper Lunatic Asylum on the 8th of October 1888. High Royds had its own railway. It was an industrial line on the Otley and Ilkley Joint Railway. What I found from researching a little bit more is that a significant number of mental asylums had their own railway systems. This website is absolutely amazing. If we click on modern railways, you can see all of the railways in existence today. And we also have historic railway lines. And if you can see, there were a lot more railways in the past. We have industry lines as well. And these are the lines that went to workhouses and industrial complexes, such as the mental asylums. If we scroll into Leeds, you can see all of the industry lines and the historic railways. And we go up to Menston, and this is where you can see the line that went directly to the lunatic asylum. Menston Lunatic Asylum, or West Riding Pauper Lunatic Asylum, was one of 4 named West Riding in Yorkshire. If you do a general search online, you'll only find Stanley Royds in Wakefield if you type in West Riding Pauper Lunatic Asylum. So it's really interesting that quite a few of them had the same name. West Riding was one of 3 historic subdivisions of Yorkshire. You also had East Riding and North Riding. These areas, how they're called in the past, don't exist anymore. They're divided into Yorkshire, as well as some areas that include Greater Manchester. High Royds Hospital had its own ballroom and recreation hall, which apparently quite a lot of the lunatic asylums had at the time. The hospital ballroom. You enter the ballroom from the admin building corridor, and the first sight of it is breathtaking. An absolute architectural treat with high ceilings, stained glass, ornamental carvings, and 6 ornate fireplaces. What were these mental asylums of the past? Why were there so many asylums in the 1800s and 1900s? Let's dive a little deeper into the world of asylum. We'll start by looking at the 1800s first, and then we'll go further back in time to the beginning of these institutions, which originates in London. I came across the National Archives on the UK government's website. There, you are able to access records of asylums and patients. If you're aware of a family member in your ancestry having been admitted and are interested, you can access these files. The reasons why people were admitted is innumerable, and many questions that have arisen for me doing this research is whether all of these people were, in fact, insane, or whether this institution was used for more sinister purposes as a means of control. Stories of the medieval times are fraught with torture, isolation, and outright barbaric actions from the people who were meant to be caring for those in need. On the government's website, it mentions mental health and the state. Until the 19th century, the custody of idiots and lunatics, as well as the ownership of their land and property, fell to the Crown. Before the establishment of lunatic asylums, pauper lunatics were dealt with locally under poor law, vagrancy law, or criminal law. They were likely to end up in workhouses, houses of correction, or prisons. Wealthier people had to make private arrangements for the care of family members with a mental illness. Private madhouses were licensed by the Justices of the Peace and were examined by several series of government commissioners. The County Asylums Act of 1808 encouraged Justices of the Peace to build county lunatic asylums to house any pauper lunatics in their county. However, the response was slow, and many patients continued to end up in prisons and workhouses. Under the Lunacy Act of 1845 and the County Asylums Act of the same year, county lunatic asylums became compulsory, and the Lunacy Commission was established to take responsibility, among other things, to regulate them. On the government's website, you'll also find Chancery reports. While pauper lunatics were dealt with locally, the care of idiots and lunatics who owned significant amounts of property was administered by the Crown, which also took charge of their property and possessions. The responsibility for this fell to the Lord Chancellor, and those concerned were subsequently sometimes known as Chancery lunatics. So essentially, the same thing was happening to the rich as was happening to the poor. Their property and possessions were taken from them. Let's rewind further to the first recorded asylum or hospital in Britain. Bethlehem Royal Hospital, first known as St Mary of Bethlehem Hospital and later known as Bedlam, which is where we get the word today, was founded in 1247. Located on Bishopsgate in London, where Liverpool Street Station now exists. It later moved a short distance to Moorfields in 1676 and then to St George's Fields in 1815 before moving to its current location in 1930. The origins of Bethlehem Hospital lay not in any humanitarian purpose or medical principle, but rather in religious rivalry. In 1244, the town of Bethlehem in modern-day Palestine was seized by the Turks in one of the many transfers during the crusading Middle Ages of cities from Christian hands to Muslim and vice versa. In reaction, the Religious Order of Bethlehem was founded in France for the purpose of raising alms. A chance meeting around this time between the Bishop of the See of Bethlehem and a London alderman named Simon Fitzmary resulted in the latter granting land just outside the walls of London for the establishment of the Priory of St Mary of Bethlehem. As a medieval hospital and religious priory, Bethlehem initially functioned very little as a hospital in the modern-day sense of the term. Medieval hospitals occupied one or several possible functions, as leper communes, almhouses, hostels, and as infirmaries. Bethlehem also acted as well as a temporary home for travelling persons, in particular the Order of Bethlehem, in addition to its role as a priory. The Statute of Cambridge 1388 can be regarded as the first act for the relief of the poor. It prohibited any labourer from leaving where he was living without a testimonial showing reasonable cause for his departure to be issued under the authority of the Justices of the Peace. It came into force after the Black Death, and the Black Death was a bubonic plague pandemic occurring in Western Eurasia and North Africa from 1346 to 1353, and it's recorded as the most fatal pandemic of all human history, causing 75 to 200 million deaths. So after the Black Death, this poor law is introduced. It led to the state becoming responsible for paupers. Let's do a timeline recap so far. In 1247, Bethlehem or Bethlehem Hospital is opened. In 1346, the Black Death occurs, and in 1388, the Statute of Cambridge is introduced, restricting poor people from moving. The Vagabonds and Beggars Act of 1494 aimed to deal with the problem of the poor, not for aiding them, but for punishing them. Then we have the Vagabonds Act of 1530, which was passed under Henry VIII, and this is part of the Tudor Poor Laws of England. Under this act, vagabonds were subject to the harsher punishments of whipping rather than stocks. 1542, we have Parliament passing the Witchcraft Act, which defined witchcraft as a crime punishable by death. Now, the 1600s is where it starts getting really dark. I listened to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History for this part, which I'm going to tell you is not for the faint-hearted. Dan's episode named Painfotainment takes you on a deep dive into the history of public executions as entertainment. These executions were huge public events drawing in massive crowds of people wanting to see justice served for the crime committed. In 1774, we have the Madhouses Act. Whilst private asylums began operating in the early 1600s, the status and powers of madhouse keepers was undefined in law until 1774. Hence, for much of the 18th century, there was no state regulation or responsibility for the daily happenings or day-to-day management of private asylums. Consequently, numerous private madhouses became subject to public scandals, accused of horrific abuses, malpractices, and patient mistreatment, often labelled as a retreat for rich people. And these people with property would be making money from those in need without actually providing any medical support. And as we've seen, many of these people were tortured as a result. During this time, we have what is known as the trade in lunacy. In the 18th and early 19th centuries, the number of private madhouses in England increased steadily to meet the demand of the so-called trade in lunacy. They operated on a profit basis within the free market economy. One of the most superior madhouses was Ticehurst House in East Sussex. Founded in 1792, patients could live in separate villas in the grounds, bring their own cooks, and even ride to hounds. In summary, the institution of asylum in the medieval period was a way of dealing with the problem of the poor. Paupers found themselves in workhouses, mental asylums, or prisons. The rich were sent to expensive, retreat-style privately owned estates, and in both cases, it appeared people were treated horrendously. Not only that, but a significant number of them were publicly executed for entertainment purposes, desensitising the public and even incentivising them to partake, where the audience could choose the punishment, all in the name of justice. Did any of these treatments actually work? Did medieval people solve mental illness? As far as I can tell, this appears not to be the case. And what in fact was taking place was brutality to a level the modern mind cannot even comprehend. And we also saw the reclaiming and what I believe to be the redistribution of people and their assets among the controllers. Thanks for watching. Please share your thoughts in the comments below and like and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you in the next one.